Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got a couple things to discuss. Could the Jackets be on the verge of making a ton of moves? Could the Oilers be looking to add a goaltender? Flames interested in still moving a defenseman, and there's a lot of teams interested. And there could be some more depth moves being made by the Flyers and the Avalanche. We'll get to all of those coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Intent Talking Channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. We are so close to 200 subscribers. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without you guys, so don't forget to subscribe. But we'll start today's video off by discussing a couple of PTO updates. There was no signings over the past couple of days since Zimmer signed his ELC in the past couple of days, so nothing really to talk about in the signing news. We did have a couple of updates on PTOs. All three of the remaining PTO players have been released off of their PTOs. I missed the one from last week, but last week Mark Piszczek was released by the Pittsburgh Penguins, so he's not a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins organization anymore, so he'll have to look for opportunities elsewhere. Not overly surprised given the fact he was injured, but he was definitely a decent depth defenseman, so I'm not overly surprised that he did get let go, but I thought with the Pittsburgh Penguins needing the defenseman, maybe they could have signed him, so it'll be interesting to see where he goes next, but Piszczek's not on the PTO anymore for the Pittsburgh Penguins. On Saturday, we had the Florida Panthers wind up moving Brett Ritchie off of his PTO. Florida Panthers really have a decent amount of depth on their forward group right now, especially having Jonah Gadjevich a little while ago. So I'm not overly surprised that Brett Ritchie was not able to get an NHL opportunity with the Florida Panthers. He'll be looking for employment elsewhere. And then just yesterday on Monday, we had the Carolina Hurricanes to go with Lars-Olaf Halak on his PTO. Halak's definitely a decent goaltender, but they have trust in Ranta, they have trust in Kochetkov now. When Anderson went down with an injury, they were not overly confident in Ranta and Kochetkov, which is why they signed Halak, but since then, they've started to play a little bit better, and they're a little more confident with those guys, and it sounds like Anderson's starting to get a little bit healthier, so hopefully Anderson can return, maybe not in the not-too-distant future, but still hopefully he can return, and he can play well, but it sounds like they're a little more confident with their goaltending situation now, so they let Halak go off of his PTO, so there's no more PTOs anymore. The last three have now been let go. Maybe they wind up getting signed at a different point in time. We'll have to wait and see, but Piszczek in Pittsburgh, Ritchie in Florida, and Halak in Carolina have all been released from their PTO, so it'll be interesting to see if they get opportunity elsewhere. Going over to the waiver updates, we talked about on Saturday how defenseman Dakota Mermis in Minnesota and forward Patrick Brown in Boston have both been placed on waivers for the purpose of being sent down. It looked like it was going to be possibly claimed. Mermis, like we said, is a good 6th, 7th defenseman, probably more of an AHL defenseman at this point in time. We said he was very unlikely to possibly get claimed. We said Brown would probably be more likely given the fact he's a solid 4th-line center and a cheap deal, but we said it was very likely that both guys wound up clearing, and they both did. So the Bruins are able to place Brown back into the AHL. They have a solid forward group right now, so I'm not overly surprised that they did that. For the Wild, they got Spurgeon back, so they didn't really need Mermis anymore. They have Bogosian as well, so they wound up moving Mermis to the minors. I don't think that's too much of a surprise, so definitely interesting to see Mermis and Brown have cleared and have gone to the minors. And we have had 2 more waiver placements and waiver clearings. Austin Czarnik was placed on waivers on Saturday, and he wound up clearing on Sunday. I don't think this is too much of a surprise. Czarnik's a decent AHL/spare forward at the NHL level. I don't think he was able to probably edge out much opportunities elsewhere for him to be claimed, so not overly surprised that he wound up clearing, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But Czarnik wound up clearing. He was on the NHL roster for a little bit while they dealt with some injuries. Now they have some healthy bodies like Fabry. He could be placed down in the minors, and I don't think that's too much of a surprise. Felix Sandstrom, who has been injured over the past couple of weeks, has been cleared to play, and he was placed on waivers. There was a lot of talk earlier in the season that Sandstrom was a guy who could be possibly claimed, but he's been on injury reserve. He hasn't played all this year. There was a lot of talk that he'll probably clear because he hasn't gotten a lot of playing time, and that is exactly what happened. Sandstrom did wind up clearing, so not overly surprised that happened. The Flyers also have really good tandem right now of Hart and Urson, so I'm not overly surprised they wanted to move Sandstrom down to AHL. He got some playing time if Hart or Urson were to suffer injuries, or if they wanted to send Urson down. Sandstrom could easily be called up again, so it'll be interesting to see, but I think with the injuries that Sandstrom suffered over the past couple of weeks, I think that's one of the reasons why no one wound up claiming him, so it'll be interesting to see. But Mermis, who's more of an AHL defenseman at this point in time, wound up clearing, got sent to the AHL for Wild. Brown, who's a good, decent 4th-line center. I'm a tiny bit surprised he wound up clearing, but not overly shocked, so he gets sent down to the minors for the Bruins. The Red Wings sent Austin Czarnik down on waivers. Not overly surprised he cleared. He's a decent bottom six forward, but he's not someone who I think would definitely get claimed. So definitely I'm not overly surprised he wound up getting cleared, and he's going to be sent down to the minors. And same thing with Felix Sandstrom, who I think due to a lot of injuries is probably going to be the biggest reason why he wound up not clearing. So definitely it'll be interesting to see, but definitely those were a lot of good waiver clearings, and it'll be interesting to see if there's any more waiver placements in not just the future, but after Sandstrom cleared waivers yesterday, there's no new waiver placements. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next, but that's sort of the updates there on the waiver updates. Going into a couple of injury updates in the past couple of days. We'll start with some of the injuries that happened on Saturday. Chandler Stevenson was cleared to play and got back into game action for the Vegas Golden Knights. So after missing a couple of games, Stevenson was able to get back to action for the Knights, so really good stuff there. Taylor Hall was cleared to play and got back into game action for the Chicago Blackhawks. So really good stuff there for the Blackhawks to get Hall back. Edmondson, for the first time this season, was cleared to play and play his first game as a member of the Capitals in that game on Saturday. So interesting stuff there, but the Capitals finally got Edmondson back. Pierre Dubois, who was cleared to play and got back in game action for the Kings. So good stuff there from LA. Pierre-Olivier Joseph has an undisclosed injury. He's going to be out for an unknown period of time for the Pittsburgh Penguins, so not overly great news there for the Penguins. Shesterkin was cleared to play, as was Jack Hughes. So in that Rangers-Devils game, they got some key players back. Shesterkin was able to get back in the net for the Rangers. He was able to get back on the forward group for the Devils, so really good stuff there. And Stroza suffered a lower body injury. He's going to be out for an unknown period of time. Nosek suffered an upper body injury. He's going to be out for an unknown period of time. And Lizotte suffered an undisclosed injury. He's going to be out for an unknown period of time. So really bad blows for the Pens, the Devils, and the Kings to lose a couple of players for the next little while. Severson suffered an upper body injury. He's going to be out for an unknown period of time for the Jackets, so bad news there. Nick Hague was cleared to play by the Vegas Golden Knights. Austin Czarnik was cleared to play by the Detroit Red Wings, so good to see those guys get back into game action. Patrick Laine was cleared to play. He's been out for a little while for the Minnesota Wild, so good to see he was able to get back. Alex Barkov, who we said had a knee injury a couple of days ago, he's out day-to-day right now with a knee injury. It's possible it could be a little bit longer than just day-to-day, but at this point in time, they're just calling it day-to-day, so hopefully it's not overly bad. Lindblom has a lower body injury. He's going to be out week to week now for the San Jose Sharks, so bad news there. Going over to a couple of injuries that happened yesterday. Ben Harper had an upper body injury for the New York Rangers in the AHL affiliates. He's going to be out for a season, so that's a call-up option that's not going to be there anymore for the New York Rangers, so that's really bad. The San Jose Sharks got Jacob McDonald cleared to play. Anthony Cirelli was cleared to play for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Josh Manson was cleared to play for the Colorado Avalanche, and like we said, Felix Sandstrom was cleared to play, so good news there for those guys to get back into game action. And then Gabe Vilardi, who has missed about a month due to an injury, has now been updated day-to-day. So hopefully Vilardi will be back in not just in future and will not miss too much more time. But definitely, those are some really good injury updates. To see Vilardi's injury not be too long now until he's going to be back is a fantastic news for the Jets. To see Gaudreau get back for Minnesota is good. To see Shesterkin back for the Rangers is good. To see Hughes back for the Devils is good. So there's a lot of good injury updates there, but there's going to be a couple of guys who are going to be out for a little while, including a guy like Oscar Lindblom, Ben Harper, and maybe even a couple of guys like Damon Severson and Thomas Nosek. So it'll be interesting to see, but definitely some good injury updates there. And elite level players getting back into the lineup for the teams over the past couple of days. And then going over to a couple of trade rumors to discuss. First, I want to discuss were both touched on by Elliot Friedman on the Third Your Thoughts podcast. First, the Colorado Avalanche, just a short rumor here, but he says the Avalanche could be looking for some depth help on the forward group. He says that it sounds like Lehkonen's injury could possibly be a little bit longer term than the Avalanche would like, and they could use a little bit more depth scoring. The Avalanche have looked fantastic over the past couple of games, but they could definitely still use some more scoring in their lineup. So look for the Avalanche to possibly try and add some sort of a forward. I wouldn't know exactly how much they're able to add, but they do have Pavel Francouz, who's going to be out for the entirety of the season due to an injury, and even if Lehkonen is going to be back in the not just in the future, they're able to use Francouz's cap space as well as Landeskog to sort of improve their group. I could see them even look to add a goaltender if they're not overly confident in Prosvetov as their backup, so it'll be interesting to see, but I could see Prosvetov be the backup for the Avalanche, but I could see him add a goaltender as well, so it'll be interesting to see exactly how much they have confidence in Prosvetov, but with Francouz now being out for the entirety of the season, I do think there's a very likely chance they could try and add someone else with Francouz's cap hit. Francouz makes it $2 million in the cap, so they could try and add some sort of a depth forward for like somewhere around $1 million. I don't think that would be overly surprising, so it'll be interesting to see, but I could see him at a bottom 6 forward to help with their scoring depth, so it'll be interesting to see, but it sounds like according to Elliot Friedman, the Lehkonen injury could lead the Avalanche to possibly add a depth scorer. Another thing he was talking about on his Third Your Thoughts podcast was when checking around for some of the news that he was going to talk about on Saturday Night Headlines, he did say that there's a couple of people out there who were wondering what the Flyers are going to do with Sean Walker. Now, the Flyers, like we said, are in a very good stretch right now. They have 5 straight wins. They're winning a very, very high rate right right now. But they had a very good start to the season before started slipping off a little bit towards the middle part of their season so far, and then they started this 5-game winning streak. So definitely, they've had a really good run, but I'm not overly sure this can carry. I think eventually they will start to slip a little bit, and they will find themselves on the losing end of the stick a couple of times. So I'm not saying it's going to happen right now, but I think eventually over the next 10 to 15 games, they'll start to lose a couple of games more than win. So it'll be interesting to see, but I definitely do think Walker could be a guy who is traded around the deadline. It seems like Walker's been extremely well in Philadelphia. He was traded to the Philadelphia Flyers from the LA Kings last year. Kings sort of view him as a third pair defenseman. Didn't have enough cap space to sort of keep him at $2.6 million, had some cheaper options and younger options, so they traded him to Philadelphia, and he's in the final year of his deal at $2.6 million cap hit, and he's been absolutely phenomenal, playing in a top 4 role right now with the Philadelphia Flyers. He had 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points, a +6 rating in 18 games played. He has 10 points in 18 games played. He had 13 points last year in 70 games played. So he's 3 back of last year's point total, and he's only played 18 games. And his career high at the NHL level is 24 points, which was in the 1920 season for the LA Kings. And he's only 14 points off of that. So there's a very likely chance that if Walker continues to put up points like this, he's going to be on pace for a career season. So I think there would be a ton of teams interested. I know Philly's having a good stretch right now. I think eventually he will become available. Walker, I think on a cup contending team, could definitely be a solid third pair defenseman. I think if the Flyers were willing to retain about half of his salary, there would be a ton of teams interested in him. If at $1.3 million for an offensive defenseman like Walker, I think there would be a ton of teams interested. And like I said, if Walker continues to put up points like this, not only is he going to put up a career high in his point total, but he's going to get probably a little bit of a pay raise in the offseason. So it'll be interesting to see, but that Elliot Friedman did say a couple of people wondering if the Flyers would move Walker, and I think eventually they will. Like I said, they're on a hot streak right now. I don't think they'll be doing things anytime soon, but I think eventually, once we get into the new year, when it's January, February, when we start getting into a lot of trade news, and the Flyers, I think, most likely will start to fall a little bit below the playoff line, I think they'll definitely start to consider moving some of their UFAs, and Walker, I think, is one of their bigger ones right now. So, I mean, if they could get like a second or third round pick for Walker after taking him on as a cap dump with the Kyle Peterson contract, I think they would definitely be willing to consider that a win. So it'll be interesting to see, but it sounds like Walker could be a possible trade chip to be moved in the not too distant future. On top of that, we have 3 other trade rumors here. First, with the Calgary Flames. It does sound, according to Elliot Friedman, like the Flames will try and move someone. I said the Michael Backlund, either he doesn't know exactly, but either in a group meeting or individually, said that the Flames need to start to quiet the noise going around the team and need to start playing hockey games and winning. According to Elliot Friedman, Backlund said that just sort of quiet the noise around the team, and they started to play a lot better. Like we said, they're 5-1-2. They've gone up to 7-8-3. So like I said, the Flames have done fantastic, but if you look at their schedule, it's been really, really light. They've lost 2 Shield games, one to the Leafs, one to the slumping Islanders, so that's not overly great news. Their one lone loss was to an Ottawa Senators team who was struggling, so they were able to give them a win, so that was not overly great news. And then their 5 wins, the Vancouver one was a really good one. Even if the Vancouver Canucks were tied, that was a fantastic win for them. But they've also been the slumping Kraken twice, the Nashville Predators, who have not done overly well to start the season, and the Montreal Canadiens, who are currently below 500. So it's going to be interesting to see over the next stretch of games exactly how well they can do, because after they play Nashville, which is another winnable game on Wednesday, the next 5 games are going to be against Dallas, Colorado, Vegas, Dallas again, and Vancouver, which are basically the 4 best teams in the Western Conference. So if they're able to escape with even a 2-2-1 record, that would be fantastic. But it was still, I don't think, would be overly confident boosting for the Calgary Flames. If they were able to get 2 wins in 5 games against those teams, it wouldn't be overly great, but wouldn't be half bad. I think there's a very likely chance they could go something like 1-3-1 or 1-2-2 eventually as well. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how Calgary does against the 4 best teams in the Western Conference right now. 4 of the best 5 probably. You could also throw LA in there as well, but definitely it'll be interesting to see. The Flames do have some problems, but they've definitely been playing a lot better against some of the lower opponents over the past little while, but this next stretch of games is going to be extremely difficult for the Flames. So I think if the Flames start to lose a lot of games and wind up going a little bit farther below playoff line, there's a very likely chance that maybe not right now, maybe not before the December roster freeze, but I think maybe very early in January they could start moving players. Elliot Friedman once again said that there's a lot of talk that they could still try and move a lot of players. He said once Toronto touches down, which I think they've already done from the Sweden series, they're going to be a player in this. They want Zadorov and Tanev, and he says they could be very big players players for one of the Calgary's defensemen. He said the Stars, who probably won't try and go and get Patrick Laine because they want a defenseman, he said they could easily be really good players. They're looking for a defenseman right now. They were linked to Hanifin in the offseason, so I could definitely see the Stars have interest in one of the Flames defensemen. He said that the Islanders could be players for the Flames defenseman, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. He's not sure about the Canucks because he's not sure if Flames want to trade with the Canucks. He also said that a team like the Coyotes have checked in Hanifin in the last little while, so it'll be interesting to see how they feel about trying to add a defenseman. We know the Coyotes could use a defenseman, the Stars could probably use a defenseman, Leafs same thing. Islanders, if they would probably add a defenseman, I would probably say it's best to add a third-line left-shot defenseman, which is sort of what Zadorov is, so I could see him have interest in Zadorov. Leafs could definitely use a couple of defensemen, so it'll be interesting to see, but it sounds like there's a lot of teams interested in the defenseman. I've heard Boston be interested in the defenseman. I've heard New Jersey be interested in defenseman in the offseason. I heard Zadorov be linked to a team like the Florida Panthers. I heard the Sabres be linked to a team like Noah Hanifin. So it'll be really interesting to see, but I definitely think there's a very likely chance that the Flames might get moving a few players, possibly in the early parts of January. So it'll be interesting to see. But I know they're 5-1-2 in their last few games, but they've had a really soft schedule against some teams who are having trouble winning at this point in time. And I think this next stretch of games when they play four best teams in the Western Conference in Dallas, Colorado, Vancouver, and Vegas, I think that'll be a really telling sign to see if they are a much better team, much improved team, or if they're still a little bit of a worse team who's just been a really good stretch. So it'll be interesting to see. Going over to the Edmonton Oilers, Elliotte Friedman did say the Oilers have been talking to the Canadiens. It sounds like they were scouting the Canadiens, looking at all of the goaltenders for the Canadiens over the past while, as all three have played. He says they could be looking at a guy like Montembeault or Primo. Primo's a really good goaltender. Good young goaltender, but is he really going to solve Oilers' problems in net? I mean, he's a really good goaltender, but at this point in time, he'd be a really good 1B. He could be a good stopgap for Stuart Skinner, so Skinner can sort of start to play a little bit better, but I don't think he's the answer in net. Montembeault, I think, could be. He's shown really well in Montreal. He's a good 1A, so I could see Montembeault be a possible option, but there was a lot of talk recently that the Canadiens really wanted to sign Montembeault to an extension, so it'll be really interesting to see if he does wind up getting an extension or not, but it'll be interesting to see. I do think that the Canadiens really want to keep Montembeault, and they would rather keep him. And I think there is a possibility he signs an extension, but if they're able to get a really good return from Edmonton, I don't see how they could turn that down. And Montembeault is only making $1 million this year, which would be an extremely good win for the Oilers on their cap. So I could definitely see the Oilers have some really good interest in Montembeault, but if the Canadiens pull a trigger or not, that's another question. But definitely, it'll be interesting to see if they have some interest in Montembeault. I know he's been linked to Allen as well, but it sounds like, according to Elliotte Friedman, Allen may be the less of the likely of the three. So it'll be interesting to see, but it sounds like the Oilers are heavily linked to Canadiens goaltending, whether that be Montembeault, whether that be Allen, or whether that be Primo. And I think there's a very likely chance that one of those three could wind up going to Edmonton. He said that even though they may not be able to grab a guy like Gibson or Binnington, who have also been linked to the Oilers as of late, I don't think Binnington's up for sale. He's not done overly bad with St. Louis, and they're in a playoff spot right now, so I don't expect them to try and move Binnington. Gibson, same sort of thing in Anaheim. He's done all right so far, and I think until the Ducks start to fall a little bit, Gibson probably won't be moved. So given the fact that those two guys are probably not being moved right now, on top of the fact that the Oilers really can't afford those two guys, it sounds like Elliotte Friedman did say that maybe they don't try and go after a solid starter who really fixes their solution. Maybe they go after a cheaper option that fixes their goaltending in the short term. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of goalie they go after. But after losing 6-4 to the Tampa Bay Lightning on Saturday, after losing 5-3 to the Florida Panthers on Monday, I think it's evident that even though their offense is playing better, their goaltending and their defense is still atrocious and could still use a ton of work. So it'll be interesting to see, but I would expect that if the Oilers continue to lose the next couple of games in bad fashion, that the Oilers will definitely try and start to look at a goaltending move after making the coaching change. So it'll be interesting to see, but it sounds like the Oilers definitely do have interest in one of the Canadian three goaltenders. It'll be interesting to see if they try to go after Montembeault, try to go after Allen, or try and go after Primo. And if they aren't able to get one of the Canadiens goaltenders, where else do they look? It'll be really interesting to see there. And lastly here, what's next for Columbus Blue Jackets? They've lost 13 of 14 games. I think they've lost 9 in a row or something like that. They've not done overly good. There's a very likely chance that I think the GM's on the hot spot right now after signing Babcock, after releasing Babcock, that sort of thing not working out. I think there's a very likely chance that Jarmo Kekalainen, who's currently the GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets, may not wind up finishing the season in Columbus if this things continue to go south. I think there's a very likely chance that this sort of start could possibly cost himself his job. But definitely, there's been a lot of talk after Patrick Laine was scratched on Saturday, did not play. I don't think he's done poorly, but he still has injury problems. but he's only scored a couple of goals in 9 games, so it'll be really interesting to see how he does after being scratched. But definitely, there's been a lot of questions now about could the Jackets possibly move a couple of pieces? Could Laine be moved? I think it's a possibility a little bit after being healthy scratched. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. I think they're going to try and work through it. But I think at some point there's a very likely possibility that maybe they do try and wind up trading him. At $8.7 million cap hit, though, it would be extremely hard to move. And they may have to retain some salary. He's on the books right now for the rest of this year plus 2 more seasons. So it'll be interesting to see, but we know Laine is a good goal scorer. We know in the right system he could definitely score a ton of goals, but I just don't think Columbus might be that system, and they have been using him as a center, which I don't think has been the best of opportunities there. It sounds like, according to Elliot Friedman, they've sort of stepped up their search to try and get another top-end center on this team, as they've tried to use Laine in that center spot and just hasn't worked out so far. So I do think there's a very likely chance they could try and move some pieces to get center. Could they move Laine to get center? I think it's possible if the right trade occurred, but I'm not going to say it's a guarantee. And I think if Laine continues to have struggles, even if he's placed back on the wing and he continues to have struggles, I think there's a very likely chance that Laine may wind up being moved. Maybe it's not this year, maybe it's in the offseason, maybe they have to retain some salary, but I think there's a very likely chance that if he continues to struggle in Columbus, maybe he does wind up getting moved. So it'll be a really interesting situation to watch. But if the Jackets are really going to be another team who's the playoff sellers, who could they look to move this offseason? Because they don't have a lot of UFAs. If you look at this team, their only pending UFA right now is Spencer Martin and Jack Roslovic. Now, I think there will be some interest in Roslovic. If they were to retain money on him, sell him for around $2 million, I think there will be a ton of teams interested in Roslovic. Martin's a decent third stringer, so they could possibly move him for maybe like a depth pick. But besides that, they don't really have much in the way of expiring contracts. Besides those ones, they have Jake Bean, who's an RFA. They have Alex Texier, who's an RFA. They have Marchenko and Sillinger, who are RFAs. They have Chinakhov, who's an RFA. So basically, they only have a couple of young players who are ready to be RFAs. Like we said, Laine could be a possible trade option. Corrali's one of their better players. Olivier Danforth and more bomb six help. I don't think they're going to try and trade Gaudreau, even though he's been benched a couple of times too in games. But I definitely think they really need to try and figure out a way to find Gaudreau's rhythm. He's not been overly bad, but he hasn't been to the point production level that he's had last year. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. Their defense, I don't expect them to move Werenski, Severson, Provorov, Juracek. Those guys have been pretty good top 4 defensemen so far this year. Branson, I think, has done overly well this year too. I still think there's a very likely chance they move one of Peter Boqvist. They're trying to free up some more defensive roster space, so it'll be interesting to see, but I don't see many options here to possibly be moved. Besides moving Roslovic as a pending UFA, besides moving one of their defenseman, Peter Boqvist, there really isn't much here that the Jackets could trade that could really shake things up. So I think, given that fact, maybe they do move Laine. It'll be really interesting to see. It'll be a really interesting trade to see what they could get for Laine, because Laine was traded for Dubois and a third-round pick, as well as Roslovic, going with Laine to Columbus a couple of years ago, and so far Laine has not been overly well in Columbus. So definitely, I think there's a very likely chance that Laine, if he doesn't start picking up the pace and start filling in well, maybe not this year, maybe in the offseason, I think there's a very likely chance that Laine could wind up being moved. I think he could be a name that we see in the rumor mill, but he would be a guy who would need to be having some of his cap hit retained at an $8.7 million cap hit, and it would definitely not be the return that the Jackets will be looking for. So definitely, I'm not exactly sure he's going to be traded right now. I think the Jackets are going to try and figure out a way to try and get him going, maybe try and work him away from the center position, but it'll definitely be interesting to see if this doesn't work out. Maybe Laine winds up getting moved. So definitely, let's hear your guys' thoughts on this down in the comments. Does Laine get moved at some point in time? And if so, where do you think would be a best fit for Laine? He's a really good goal scorer. That's sort of the only way he can really work. And I don't think he's a really good center. So where do you think Laine could fit? And do you think they would need to retain salary if they were to trade him? Not saying they're definitely going to trade him, but if they were to, where do you think he could go? On top of that, do you think the Jackets could move some pieces before a deadline? Is it Peak? Is it Boqvist? Is it Roslovic? Do you think there's other players the Jags could move? Definitely have to hear your guys' thoughts on that. For the Flames, who do you think winds up getting moved where? Where does Hanifin go? Where does Zadorov go? Where does Tanev go? I know they've had a really good stretch over the past 8 games, but I definitely think they're going to be trading some players, so it'll be definitely interesting to see where they go. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. On top of that, where do you think the Oilers get their goaltenders from? I think there's a very likely chance they're going to have to acquire a goaltender. Do they get one from Montreal? Are they able to get a bigger goalie like a Binnington, like a Gibson? Or do they have to go and try and get a smaller goaltender from elsewhere? Definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Where do you think the Avalanche get depth scorer from? Are they able to get a rental, someone with a little more term? Definitely, I think there's a very likely chance the Avalanche could get a depth scorer. Do you think the Flyers wind up moving Sean Walker? I think there's a very likely pending rental, who I think could definitely be moved as well, so I think that'll be interesting. And what do you think about the rest of the news? Injury updates, waiver updates, and PTO updates. Definitely, let's hear your guys' thoughts on that. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you would like to, remember to subscribe down below. We're so close to subscribers. Thank you for all of your support. I'll never be able to do this without you guys, so don't forget to subscribe. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so let me check that out. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for our next video. See you guys soon.